Hello and welcome to the Zach Ratliff Show. I'm Zach. This is Dale Huls.
Hey, Zach.
Hey, Dale. Thank you all for being here. Let me start by thanking my sponsors, then we'll get on with it. I'd like to thank Mortgage Financial Services here in Texarkana. I'd like to thank Elmwood Custom Goods. And I'd like to thank Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org. Okay, this is Dale. If you guys ever listen to the radio show, then they know that we're friends. Or if they've ever been to a Bowie County Patriots meeting, we usually sit at the same table.
That's right.
Except for last week, we had so many people that they messed up our seating arrangement. It's like going to your grandma's Baptist church.
Yeah,
Nobody didn't know they were supposed to sit in my seat.
we had 40 people there that night, and it's like, people I've not seen there before,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, where's Zach? And you're like, we're on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, just trying to find a seat. So anyway, Dale and I met in 2020 when I was running for Congress, and Dale, I'll kind of let you give some of your backstory, however much you want to give, and of course, I've got to ask the NASA question at some point that I always ask.
So you say,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, it's like we got up here full time in 2020. We bought like 50 acres down 259. Almost 15 years ago now, and we eventually homesteaded there when I was retiring. I'm not going to retire in 2020, but when COVID hit, they said, "Oh, everybody go home, work from home," and I'm like, "Okay, so I spent another 2 years working from home."
Right.
And we had our house built and everything. So yeah, I've got to know you. I've got to know the Bowie County Patriots and
Yeah.
all the other stuff. I ran for office for state rep.
Yeah.
I'm very heavily in politics on the Republican side.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, okay, I just feel like I got to go do something.
Well, and you're based in, I always say I have three filters for me personally. Number one, first and foremost, I'm a Christian.
Right.
I'm going to tell you about some Jesus. Number two, I guess it's number two and three, really. I'm a dad and then a son. After that, I'm a conservative. Somewhere after that, I'm a Republican, right? I mean, so we have like beliefs. Not that we agree on everything, because I'm sure we don't. Because in our party, we're allowed to have our own thoughts, which is a wild concept.
Right. And I'll tell you when you're wrong. So we got no problem there. You're right. We stick with God first. In fact, the reason I'm in here all hot and sweaty as hell is we went to, I was helping First Baptist Church Decaf go out there and give beds to children, poor children that don't have any beds. So I was out there building that this morning, and
And that's something you hear from the left. Who's going to take care of these kids? There are people like you and others that actually do what they say. They actually practice what they're saying that the government, get out of the way, let us help people make the government small.
well, I asked God for a lot,
Yeah.
and He only asked for a little bit back. So I really might be giving a little bit back when I can, as I can.
Yeah, that's right. So you ran for state rep. Was that 22?
Yeah. Well, the last elections,
Yeah,
I
24. Yeah, okay. And so, been doing this a while now, so I kind of lose track of time. And put together an awesome grassroots campaign. Um, a lot more money than anyone ever would have guessed went into the race. $1 million on from the other two guys.
Yeah.
I mean, came into it and you just got outspent, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to give out spent, but you know what? It's okay. I ran the campaign I wanted to run.
Right.
I ran on the issues I want to run. I ran a decent campaign.
You
You know,
especially compared to what you were called. I remember us talking about that on the radio. Um, it was interesting to see how nasty it got right here in Bowie County. Well, and in House District One, Texas House District One. And I'm thinking, man, if Dale had to deal with this, how much does Donald Trump have to put up with?
oh, there's no comparison. I mean, they've been after that man since day one. Me, they just call me a run-of-the-mill Nazi sympathizer.
Yeah, which we should all be used to.
That's right, and that came from Van Ever's campaign, and he played it off that, oh, it was my consultants, I had nothing to do with it. I'm like, yes, I ran the campaign. Every decision like that I made, and So we'll leave that where it is.
That's what I always think's funny. Anytime you hear this does not come from the campaign. The campaign has nothing to do with this. Like they might not, they can't give you the yes or the no. Yeah, the candidate, but somebody knew something.
Absolutely. And you know what? Never did get an apology for it. Even though he goes, well, it wasn't me, it was like, but he never come and said, I'm sorry.
Or it came out of that $500,000 you spent.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, you know what? I don't care. I ran for the right reasons because I wanted us to do better. It seems like up here in Northeast Texas, we seem to have our voice muted, covered up,
We did.
ignored,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, we need to change that.
Okay.
So I wanted to be part of that incoming wave of freshmen that came in last time, which are doing a fantastic job, by the way.
Right.
And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I want to be part of that. Well, I didn't get elected, came in third, and
Right.
that's what the money said I'd come in as.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You know what? I still got to go to Austin.
And make a big difference.
I worked for Brent Money, one of the top 10 conservatives in the House this last session. And I got to be the legislative director and got to make a difference on policy.
Right.
And I got paid for it. So,
Yeah, which the representatives can't say. There's a lot that comes with being a Texas representative, but pay is not some of it.
That's right. These guys, usually they own their own businesses or they're retired or something like that, and or they have just a pile of money.
Right.
And I had none of that. but that's okay. It's like I've been in Texas politics for 15, 16, 17 years, steady working the grassroots. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? I've seen enough. I've been around the block enough. I know what it means to be a Republican.
Right.
And I said, you know what? I can bring that to the state house. Well, I did bring it to the state house. I still work with these guys.
Right.
And June 2nd at the end of the session, I was done.
Yeah.
And they said, you won't come back? I go, no.
I have enough.
Yeah, I did what I want to do. I saw how the sausage gets made. And it ain't ready.
Right.
There's a reason why you can buy it in packages.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm just glad that I had that experience. I got to do things, but you know what? I'm not done yet.
Well, and you're not, and we'll get to that, but you say Northeast Texas. That's because you're coming out of Houston.
Right.
You were down there for a while, working for NASA and other things. So, kind of give us some history on that for those that don't know you.
Well, let's see. I did retire from NASA. I worked there for 20 years, 21 years actually, and I got 4 years of military service there, so I'm a 25-year government service retiree. But I came to NASA out of basically Saudi, no, not Saudi, Bosnia. I was working for the nuclear weapons program before, and my first wife, she got breast cancer, and I she had been caught in that weird time where she had dropped her insurance to come on my insurance
Right.
and got diagnosed. And back then, pre-existing conditions mean you never get insurance.
Yeah.
And so I took a job in Saudi Arabia to, no, excuse me, Bosnia, to go out there and work with the Clinton administration to try to stop the killing and do the peacekeeping there in Bosnia.
Right.
So I did that for a year. And then when I came back, I was looking for a job. There was an old patch, and I wound up with NASA. And I was like, okay, this is like a childhood dream.
Because you're an engineer.
Yes, I'm an engineer, University of Florida, mechanical engineer. And it was like, okay, this is really cool.
Right.
So I did that for a long time, and there's so many stories and everything there. I truly cherish my service there.
Right.
But when it was time to retire, it was, for like the previous 5 years before I retired, I actually retired. I'm thinking, God, I'm coming up on retirement. I don't feel like I want to retire.
Right.
By the time I retired, I'm like, I can't wait for it.
I had to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we get older and our priorities change,
Yeah.
and we're no longer driven by our job. And just doing, you say you do what you love, you never work a day.
Correct.
I was doing what I love to do, but you know what? There comes a time where you got to turn things over to the next generation,
Right.
and let them go for it. It's not my ass anymore; it's their ass.
Right.
And,
That's an interesting way to look at it.
and it's the same with almost anything.
Well, so Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at that. And you can play that towards politics. You can play that towards because look at people running our, especially our national government, are 80 plus years old. It's a geriatric. I mean, it's not necessarily where you want to be.
Well, I didn't want to run for state rep so I can be governor someday.
Right.
I wanted to come in there and do my part,
Yeah.
lift my load and contribute what I could using all the wisdom and experience that I've gathered over the years. And it was to stand up for the next guy,
Right.
and this is one of those things where, I'm helping Chris Spencer
Yeah.
on his run against Van Niever.
He's been on the show.
He was one of my opponents last time.
Yeah.
Me and Chris got along, even though we were running
Right.
the same race. We never said a harsh word towards each other.
I never heard him say anything negative towards you.
And I find there's enough conservative to work with there to, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll help this man. We'll keep him on a straight and narrow. We'll keep it a conservative. If not, he's going to have to face us again.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And that's the thing about being involved is where everybody is. You can, if somebody gets off, you can, hey, pull back on the reins. If that doesn't work, we'll run against you.
Well, the trick is we're going to put him with the right bunch of people in there already. So, and those guys, they talk all the time. They do strategy sessions. They look and see how each other is voting. And none of them want to get off the reservation from the conservatives.
Right.
And if they do, they start getting criticized and such.
Right.
So if we keep him with the right bunch of fellows, he'll be good.
Good. So the question that I teased at the first of the show is, I think this is when I first met you, so I really didn't get your sense of humor then, whereas now I know you better. It was right when, it was a few years ago, they kept saying, no, NASA's or the government's declassifying all these UAPs and UFOs and all this thing. And I just looked at you, I'm like, so, are there UFOs? And you said, and then you said space is weird.
Yeah, there's more stuff goes on there that people know, and we can't explain everything, and we probably shouldn't.
No, that's exactly right. Well, and just I like to put the GOB on it, the good old boy, and my view of things always has been that, and we won't go too far into this, but if angels are real, demons are real. They're definitely interdimensional beings, and some of the stuff you can't explain comes from a lot of that. Now, I don't know if that's in space or whatever, however that works, but that's just always been my view, so I move forward.
Well, and what you said is so true. If there's angels, there's demons.
Right.
And there's the supernatural out there. There is no doubt in my mind.
Right.
Even Christian, we can't think otherwise.
Right.
Now I'm a Star Trek fan, Star Wars,
yeah.
science fiction. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I get into all that.
But it's a movie, or a TV show. Right. It ain't real.
Yeah.
So it's escapism. I like that. Now, are there things out there we can't explain? Things that go on? Is God's plan bigger than just Earth? I don't know.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, we know if that's we know there's a second Earth coming.
Yeah.
If you hold the Bible as truth, which I do.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a place for every Christian, there's a planet.
Right.
So heaven is big, and so I don't know what's out there. I will find out someday.
That's right. Everybody is going to find out.
Hopefully not next week when I go for some surgery, but I will get there. I will find out. Answers will be had.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, well that's cool. And this is actually the most we've ever been able to talk about it. So radio gets real weird about what you talk about and all that. Well, okay, let's move on. So now we're into the beginning of campaign season again. I don't know how to phrase this. So you're going to run for Bowie County
Republican
chair. And so I guess let's go with what drove this besides Adam Huggins.
Let me set the stage here. Okay, since we got time.
Yeah, we got all the time you want.
I'm over there in Austin trying to keep up with the legislation, giving Brent Money some recommendations on how he should be voting, running his legislation through the legislative council. And I'm busy, and Adam gives me a call and he goes, hey, we really, really need a new Republican chair. I go, okay, we do. Because I agreed with him, and he goes, okay, how about you? He goes, I talked to your wife, Mary, and about her running, and she goes, oh, go talk to Dale.
I didn't see Mary.
She goes, I don't know part of that. So Adam called me up and goes, Dale, would you like to run for county chairman? Or would you be a serious candidate? I go, I just lost a campaign,
Right.
and I'm like, gave it everything I had. I'm out there in Austin working hard. I'm like, Adam, you know what? Let me go pray on it. I'll give you an answer in a couple of weeks.
Right.
So a couple of weeks later, Adam calls me and goes, so what's the answer? I go, Adam, I hate to tell you this, Bubba. God didn't tell me. He didn't give me an answer.
Right.
So I'm still praying on it. He goes, okay, no problem. Keep on going. So I did. And, and the weeks turned into months.
Yeah.
And I would ask God, I go, God, what do you want me to do now?
Right.
I did this, I did that. You know, what do you want?
Right.
What do you want me to do? And so I would give those, I talked to God on that stuff, and I never would get an answer. So it gets into May, and now it's from March, 1st of March to May, and
Right.
and Adam's like, well, God tell you any direction? I'm like, no, he hasn't,
Right.
and that is about the time when I go, you know what? I'm gonna just go ahead and give the man an answer,
Right.
and just decide one way or the other. And then I take a step back, and I'm like, you know what? I gave this to God. It would be right for me to take that back because he wasn't quick enough. I go, you know what? I'm gonna leave it on there. I go, I got till the filing deadline.
Which is a long way.
Yeah, and in December, and I go, and if he doesn't give me an answer by then, that's my answer.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay. So I said, Adam, I'm sorry, I just don't have an answer for you. He goes, okay. He ain't pushy.
Right.
And so I got in the session, it was June 2nd. June the 6th, 4 days later, I've got to go to Alaska for a mission trip with First Baptist Church in
Well,
DeKalb.
I remember talking to you, and I wanted to ask somebody why.
Yeah, I'm like, because I thought it was like 2 weeks later,
Right.
no, it was 4 days later. So I'm hurrying and doing all that stuff, and so I get with the group, and we send 81 people to Anchorage, Alaska,
Mhm.
for a mission trip. Little DeKalb, Texas.
That's
Yeah,
great.
it was awesome. But I'm on the plane from Seattle to Anchorage. It's like dead of night. I've read all the Kindle I'm going to read.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, all right. Hey, God, it's Dale again.
It's me.
You got an answer for me yet? You know what? I got an answer.
Ah,
And it was like, just all of a sudden in my head, I get the word serve. And I'm like, whoa, did that just happen?
yeah.
Because God never talks to me,
Right.
I just try to follow guidance, and
Yeah.
as things work, I figure that's the invisible hand of God.
Yeah. Right.
God doesn't say, hey, Dale,
Right.
and he didn't say, hey, Dale, this time either. But I felt a presence and it goes, serve. And I did. I questioned myself. I go, did I just make up a word or what?
Yeah. You have to come up with a flip
Yeah.
on it.
And then I heard it again.
Yeah.
And I went, well, I've been after for months. If this is the answer, I'm not gonna turn my head to this.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, all right, then I'll do that. He didn't say run for office. He didn't say anything. He said serve. Now I didn't know 100% what that means.
Right.
I'm assuming it means run for county chair
Right.
because that's what I've been asking about. So I'm going to go with that. That doesn't mean I'm going to win.
Right.
When I ran for state rep, I said, open up a path. I'll go do the work.
And he did it.
And he did. He opened up the path, and he still got me to Austin, just not the way I expected.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so I'm going to do that. So I'm running for Bowie County Republican chair. Gary Singleton's been a long time county chair for that, but I just feel like we're just not active here. In fact, with my campaign, my campaign slogan is leadership is an action, not a position.
Yes.
And I heard that from Dennis London when he came and spoke at the Patriots. And it resonated with me. I'm like, that's what I've been looking for because everything I do is action oriented.
Right.
We got to do something. If you're just sitting around saying, going out, handing out cards and sitting at dinners and saying, yeah, I'm the Bowie County Republican chairman,
Right.
you ain't doing nothing.
Well, golly, there's so much in that. Bowie County could easily be lost if there was a strong Democrat presence in Bowie County. This county is purple at best.
Well, this was one of the last Democratic counties to turn over to Republican here in Texas. That isn't Republican now.
Right.
Is theoretically that it could be one of the first counties to go back to the Democrat Party
Right.
if we don't do our job here and espouse our values, our principles, and get active out in the community and let people know. I mean, I look at it as a vertical thing, not so much a horizontal thing. Where county chair is like a high level county chair, say I'm this and that. They're looking at it from their eye level as far as they see. They don't look up. They don't look at the state reps. They don't look at the state senators,
Right.
the senators, our governor. They're not focused upward,
Right.
and they're also not focused downward. They're not looking at school boards,
Yeah.
county commissioners court. They're not looking at it from that.
There's so much that the party can touch. And then and even when you break it down, people often say, "Well, I don't feel like the party listens to me." Well, have you talked to your precinct chairman? Now, what are there, 30 something in Bowie County?
32. Well, there's 32 positions that are filled by precinct chairs.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not all of them are active.
right. And then there's 40 overall precinct chairs that are moved out.
Right.
I came from Harris County down in Houston.
Uh-huh.
We had 1,069 precincts.
Right.
Where we were fortunate we had 400 precinct chairs, maybe 600 at the peak.
Right.
But, that's a lot of precincts left unattended.
Yes.
And that's our fault.
Well, but when like people watching the show or listening to the show on their way to work or whatever you're doing, people say, "I don't know who to talk to, nobody listens." How's your precinct chair? You can look that up easily, or you can text me and I'll probably figure it out where to tell you who to get a hold of. But you can find your precinct chair and say, "Hey, this is what I want." And they're responsive to votes just like everyone else. It's always and it's always like, what does this mean on the ballot? Why am I voting for this person? Well, it's important that you're voting for who this is. And then the county chair over there sets the direction for the county. This is like we want to censure somebody. Then there needs to be I don't know, buy-in on that. Whoever it goes.
Let's for one thing, let's start off with you looking for somebody to talk to in the Republican Party.
Right.
You shouldn't have. It shouldn't be an Easter egg hunt.
No, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't be an adventure. You should be able to go right to the Bowie County Republican website and get all the information you need. Who your precinct chair is, what their contact information is, or even the county chair himself, and make a phone call or send a text or send an email. It should be that simple.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, you shouldn't have to go through somebody's spouse or anything in order to get a hold of them.
Exactly. Open communication, that's part of the job description. And that is one of the things where you don't do a good job here. And our precinct chairs, they need to have a presence out there.
And I think a lot of them want to have a presence. It's just, like I said, a leader. What did you say about leadership earlier? As action?
Leadership is action.
Yeah. Well, so when the leader's out there leading, being active, everyone else say, "Okay, this is what we're doing." But if the leader is still and stagnant, so is everything else. And that's what's happened. And look, there are good people in the Bowie County Republican Party.
Absolutely.
And I know a lot, if not most of them. I even know some of the things that are good people. But that being said, they're good people in the positions. We just need to activate and we need to say, "Hey, this is what we stand for. This is what we want to." Because you're right. There's school board votes. There's city council votes. There's mayors in our county. There's everything that the Bowie County Republican Party should be focusing on to make sure that conservative principles that Texans vote for are in place.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, I've talked to some of the precinct chairs, and some of them are precinct chairs because they were promised they didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, wow, so you only wanted the position.
Yeah, you just wanted the name time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, or you want to do as a favor to a friend who asked you to come do this. It's not that they're bad people. It's just, they just, thing is, it is a leadership position.
Right.
It is, the precinct chair is the lowest elected position in the Republican Party.
Right.
When I say that, I
It
mean
should be the
bottom of the
easiest to get a hold of. Just go right to the top.
absolutely. Now, these are the type of things where they don't have to do it all themselves. The county chair doesn't have to do everything himself. The county executive committee doesn't have to do everything themselves. We have a host of volunteers. You see that on every campaign. People get up and volunteer for stuff. We could have committees that maybe has a precinct chair as the chair of that committee, with a whole bunch of regular people out there filling those committee slots. And
And then there's community buy-in into what we're doing. Well, we don't even have a building in Bowie
true, we don't have a headquarters. We don't have a website. We have a Facebook page. Like
County.
Whoop, kind of, sort of.
Well, but here's the thing, we don't need a Taj Mahal.
No,
We just need a place where people can go. Hey, we can have our meeting there or not. We can keep our signs. We can, because every year for every campaign, it's, oh, I get the calls. Hey, well, we're going to, you have anywhere that can lease real quick for 3 months. First of all, that's not an easy ask.
no.
In commercial real estate, hey, we just want to release this for 3 months. Like,
That's hard to find an apartment in Austin for 6 months.
right. Yeah, exactly right.
Everybody wants a year lease. Well, and maybe that's what we do need here. But at the right deal for the right things, we need funding for the party to do activities. You can't just ask everybody to go out there and spend their own money. It's like, we're going to have an event. We need to rent a place, maybe get some of the literature done up, advertising. That thing, it'll cost money. We should have a fundraising mechanism for the party here in East Texas that will work.
Right.
We need to work with other people. I heard when Abraham George, the Republican Party of Texas chairman, came and spoke at the Patriots.
Yeah.
The executive committee was all upset because they didn't know about it. It's like, well, why did he come speak to the Patriots and not to the Republican executive committee? Well, number one, the Bowie County Patriots asked him to come speak.
Yeah.
When did they ever ask anybody to come speak? I every executive committee meeting I've heard in Bowie County that I've actually heard about,
Right.
because they're not well publicized.
Right.
And they tend to discourage the public from coming. It is, and it's like, and they never have speakers. I've never seen one with a speaker, except when it comes down to the county convention, at election time, right before the state convention. They'll have maybe the state rep will come in and talk for a little bit,
Right.
5 minutes, and maybe somebody else will come in there. But you know what? That is not what the people need. It's not what they expect.
Right.
We don't have town halls here.
Right.
We need town halls where you can come up there to a mic and speak your mind and say, for 2 minutes and say, I got this problem. I want y'all to know about it.
Right.
And sort of get that feedback from the public. The last county executive committee meeting I went to, they were wanting to bring up things. The precinct chairs wanted to bring things up, and they were told, no, we can't talk about it because it's not on the agenda.
Is there such thing as new business?
No, apparently not. That should be on the agenda. What, I mean, like I said, I come from a place with over 1,000 precincts, and every quarterly meeting we had, you can come up there from under new business and bring forth a resolution on anything.
Right.
You can get a second, and then you debate it.
Right.
And we have Robert's Rules of Order, and we would debate this stuff, and either your resolution passed or it didn't. That's how it works.
Right.
You can't just have the chairman set the agenda and say that's all we're going to talk about.
I'm on a board that it has nothing to do with politics, but they definitely say, because under new business, I'll try to bring that up. If that's not on the agenda, I'm like, we're in new business. Like, I'll move, and it's not on the agenda. I understand. We're in new business. And then they have a section, on like C that's other. I'm like, that should be under new business,
Right.
which happens before old business.
Right. It's like, don't you understand the parliamentarian Robert's Rules of Order that you have right in your bylaws that you say you adhere to?
Right.
You don't do that. We're just too loosey-goosey.
Well, and it's frustrating, especially for the county Republican Party. Well, take this for example. Last week on Saturday, I had Representative Nathaniel Moran sitting where you're sitting to
Right.
have a conversation, and got to just have gotten to know him and his people. First of all, aside from you and your team when you were running for politics, he is the most responsive politician I know. I've got all his, and I'm not talking about his local team who I knew before he had the spot. I'm talking about his Washington D.C. team.
Right.
I can text Will and get an answer within the day. What's going on in Washington D.C. that ignores that crap? Let's just be honest about that. But so he comes in. Well, I knew he was coming in to meet with the Bowie County Republican Party,
Right.
and so I texted some of them and just said, "Hey, what time's the event tonight?" And the response was, "It's only for um, precinct chairs."
Yeah.
And well, I was just asking because I was going to make conversation with the person that's here who I knew he was coming, and you weren't going to tell me.
Right.
They were going to, and it was they were kind of accusatory, like, "Well, how'd you know?" Because I was in contact with them and told them next time they come to town to let me know so we could do an interview.
Right. I mean, we've got the Church on the Rock doing a forum on the amendments that we're going to be voting on in November.
Was it October
So,
2nd, isn't it?
yeah, October 2nd
Okay. I was like,
is when that forum will be. And we've got a panel there, and we have Michael Quinn Sullivan is going to be
yeah.
facilitating the discussion, and he's going to talk about the amendments, what they mean, so people can get information and understand what it is that they're talking about. That should have been worked in conjunction with the Republican Party.
Well, I mean, I'm not just trying to sit here and hammer the Republican Party because, like I said, there are good people there. However, we need action. And don't be mad at us and the Patriots, and don't be mad at Steve,
Right.
for one. I mean, stir tomatoes at him, maybe ahead of us, but don't 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 treat us like your ugly stepsister,
You know,
because now that being said, we've had in the last few meetings more and more Boone County Republican precinct chairs showing up, which is good because the Patriots aren't trying to replace the Boone County Republican Party. We consider ourselves Republicans,
right.
but also we're patriots and we're Christians, and that's what the Patriots is about.
And we're providing a service.
There's a need for
People want to come listen. I mean, we fill up Big Jake's back room almost every night. And that's we do this every week. I mean, and people want to know. It's not just the same people day in and day
I
out.
mean, there's a few of us that are
Yeah.
there every week.
There's a couple hardcore weirdos like myself, that come out every week, but we get different people cycling in because life happens, and if you can make it, you can make it. If you can't, you can't.
Right.
There's no mission. There's no membership.
Yeah.
You just come and go as you want.
I mean, and there's not even a role. Like you're not counting who's there.
No, but, and you're free to speak up at any time you want. There's a very informal
Yeah.
communications going on during that thing, and that's what we need more of. And like you said, we're not against the Republican Party because there are tons of good. What they lack is direction and leadership.
That's exactly right. And speaking on that, we're recording this on Wednesday. So tomorrow on Thursday, which is when this will come out,
Right.
I can't say it. Dorinda Randall
Right.
will be, who's the vice chair of the Texas Republican Party. She will be at the Bowie County Patriots meeting for anybody that wants to hear this, because this is going to release pretty early on Thursday at 6 p.m. Big Jake's in Nash. A lot of us, I'd say the core weirdos, we get there about 5 and start eating together and having fellowship and talking about whatever David brings up.
Yeah, because the best thing in politics is barbecue.
In Texas. Let me tell you this. I'm going to derail this for a second, then we'll get back to why you want to do this. So I was in, my daughter and I over the summer went up to Nashville to the Country Music Hall of Fame. Then we went on into Kentucky and went to the Noah's Ark exhibit. Anyway, I have a friend that lives in Kentucky that I haven't seen in a couple of years, and her dad and her family and their kids and whatnot. So we swung right down through that part of Kentucky, and they're like, "Hey, just meet us at this Mexican restaurant." And my daughter, who is 9, she'll be 10 in September, she goes, "Dad, you're violating one of your travel rules." And I said, "Oh, what is that?" She goes, "Rule number one, never eat barbecue outside of Memphis or Texas." She said, "Rule number two, never eat Mexican food outside of Texas."
There you
And I
go.
go, that's pretty solid. And we got there, and it was the worst Mexican food we've ever had. And she's like, my daughter just looking at me like, "Don't even complain about this. You knew not to do
There you go. I mean, yeah. Actually, I've gone to a decent Mexican place in Oklahoma.
it." Okay.
It's right across the border.
Yeah, I almost.
So it was almost Texas. You're right. I do like Memphis barbecue. Now you got my barbecue.
Yeah.
But I do like South Carolina barbecue.
I love that food barbecue.
And when I was growing up in Florida and in the military, we do country ribs, barbecue country
Yeah.
ribs. Oh, they were delicious. It's hard to find them anywhere outside of Florida, but they were really good.
Let me tell you what surprised me about South Carolina. The coon-ass contingent that is there. My uncle's from Louisiana, and I went to visit him years ago in South Carolina, and I get there, and it was just a whole neighborhood full of coon-asses. And I'm like, "What? Ain't nobody understand what y'all are saying here. Like, how do y'all get it?" But they're just their own little village, and they're right there in the middle of South Carolina.
Well, when I was going to be snarky about LSU folk and such,
Yeah,
I say because nobody else would have them. Yeah, but I'm not because I love people from Louisiana.
yeah,
When I was over in Bosnia, a lot of my contractors, I ran a base camp over there, and a lot of my contractors were from Louisiana. Solid earth, man.
those guys are scared.
Man, they would tell stories sometimes at night that would scare me. I go, stop what you're saying. I don't want to hear anymore
Yeah,
because I don't want that information where you think if somebody had to talk,
yeah.
it ain't me. I don't want to know about stuff that happens out in the bayou. All right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, okay, so getting back to yeah, just to really, that's the fun thing about podcasts. Yeah, you can go where you want to go.
All right.
But to come back to Bowie County, so how? Let's say I saw you did a presentation, maybe was it last week on kind of your drawdown
Right.
of your plan. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Well, first thing you got to do is, I'm from NASA. I'm a retired engineer and such. And you do anything, you need to set a baseline.
Right.
If I am elected county chair, I want to go set a baseline. Go, what is the status of the Republican Party in Bowie County? Where are we at? What are we doing? You know, how are the precinct chairs working? What performance metrics do we need to have? What are our goals, needs, and objectives that we're going to have? And start from there and say, okay, do we need any of these? If not, how do we get there?
And let me interject there because I've talked to business people all the time. They say, "I'm not giving any money to the Republican Party because one, the cowards in office won't do what I want them to do. Which, if we have a good baseline, if we have a good county and state executive committees, we can enforce our will of the people."
Right.
I'm not giving any money, and the two that like they didn't ask me, and so that's very much the thought here. Now, does everybody feel that way? I don't know, but I know some pretty major business owners around here that definitely feel that.
Oh yeah, then you have to organize to meet those needs.
Yeah,
How are you going to do this? Where are you going to put your efforts into? Is it going to be issues in education? Is it going to be rural health care? Is it going to be how are we going to address local government? How are we going to address state government, federal government? What are all those things that we need to do? Where's our voter outreach, our voter registration thing, or get out the vote? All those things. We hear time and time again from the current party um, executive committee. Oh, we're great here. We vote Republican. However many times they say, but it's like, okay, can you get better? Can you have a better? What's your baseline here? And can we judge how much we're gaining or how much we're losing? And that's where we've got to go things. So that'd be one of the first things. The second thing is we need to, again, we talked about funding earlier. Once we have these in place and we know where we're going and we have that vision, is go out there and seek funds to go implement what we're talking about. When we talk about town halls, Well, those things aren't free.
No.
You have to go there. You have to rent a room, rent a hall, whatever. Go see a church. Maybe make just a donation for that.
Right.
But you still got to do something, and have a good PA system and presentations and those type of things. And this costs money. To have an operating fund, like you talked about, maybe we need a headquarters, a full-time headquarters. If you can get one that's cost effective, has a good rate of return on that, that's something we can see about doing. But that's one thing. Next is be training.
Yeah.
For one thing, our preaching chairs are woefully under training. Most of them don't even know what their job is. It's like, okay,
When you hear George talk about, I mean, they're getting stuff the state agency committee sending out as precinct chairs have no idea of that.
That's right. There's communication pathways. There's things that are available to them that they don't, like you say, they don't know about. Voter rolls, just how to do their job. There's a precinct chairman handbook. There's a county chairman handbook out there for people. Nobody's ever looked at those things or looked at them. We probably need to take some of those things and tailor them to Bowie County.
Right.
And that's one of the things I would be looking at. And then third is, third, fourth, whatever it is, do that voter outreach. Go engage the community where they live. That means going out to churches and talking to folks, having a speakers thing.
Whoa. You can't talk about politics in church.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Jesus did.
Exactly. That's exactly.
It's like, of course he did. The biggest political forums in old Jerusalem and such were the synagogues.
And it still is.
And it still is.
The government has, and the left, especially, has done a good job of making us feel like we can't talk about that in church.
When I was at Seabrook Baptist Church down in Houston area, I would always apologize for missing a men's Monday night or this thing or that thing with the church. And my pastor, Pastor Rob Purdy, he'd come up to me one day. He goes, "I don't want you to ever apologize to me again for missing that church thing for a political thing." And I go, "Okay." And he goes, "Listen, that's your mission field.
Right.
If we're ever going to have a good, righteous government, we got to have people go out there and work that in the political arena."
That's right.
I took that to heart, and I still do to this day.
What's funny you say that. I've got a friend who will say, "I don't vote because God's going to move how God's going to move." And it's just now this guy loves Jesus. Don't get me wrong, but he's just wrong on this.
Have you ever read the Bible?
Exactly right. My goodness, his answer was he can quote a lot to you, but that's just his feeling on it. Is God, but
Well, I've heard people like that.
yeah,
It's like, oh, God decides everything, so I don't need to do anything.
right.
God gave us the greatest gift ever, freedom of choice.
That's right.
And to exercise that choice, you have to choose to do things. Again, action. You have to go do something.
Right.
You can't sit there. You can't stay in your church, on Sundays and ignore the rest of the world.
Right.
Because it doesn't work out.
No.
Render unto Caesar what is Caesar,
That's right.
render unto God what is God's.
Yeah.
Well, part of that is, and part of what Jesus was saying was, when he's asked about paying taxes,
Yeah.
he goes, "Look at the money."
Yeah.
That's right. So you gotta take in the world there and go do that. Now, we're concerned about taxes here in Northeast Texas. We don't want it. But you know what? Unless you're willing to go out there and make a case for it and to put your political muscle behind it and say, we the people do not want this anymore.
Right.
We don't want to hit 65 and retire and go to a limited income and then live in fear that somebody's going to take our house away because we can't pay our taxes.
Well, I'm in the real estate game. So to watch what these yearly tax payments are, of course, if you're a first-time homeowner or, and look, the majority of Americans carry a mortgage. And so they escrow that in.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a major part of your payment that you don't realize. And especially in different parts of our area, these property taxes get up there.
Well, the good thing is volume is increasing.
Yeah.
People want another option.
Yeah.
You know, part of the problem is it's like the abortion issue and the pro-life movement. You know, there's many things we've done to advance the pro-life movement in the legislature, but there's some out there that goes, I won't vote for a 6-week heartbeat bill.
Right.
I won't vote for this or that because you don't totally ban it once and for all, evermore.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do anything that's not that. I go, but you're not saving lives that way,
Right.
you know. And same thing with taxes. I tried to get a bill to be filed by a member of the Texas House this last special session because property taxes was on the call.
Correct.
And I go, well, let's make it where if you're 65 and older, you don't pay property taxes.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you can't do that, you know,
Why not?
because it's not fair to all those people who are still paying taxes. I go, okay. They go, there's too much spending. You got to cut spending first before you. I go, no. You start starving the government
That's right.
from taxes, you know, because again, property tax is a moral tax to begin with.
Oh,
You know, so if you can't protect everybody today, protect some of us today.
right.
How about the most, you know, the people who have the most to lose, the retirees,
Right.
you know, the people who live on a fixed income,
Yes.
who can't afford ever rising property taxes. I mean, we've made some, you know, we've already passed some laws that help some of that,
Right.
but you know,
Just inflate your value.
exactly, you know, and the thing is, we need to you need to starve the beast. And if you can't take away all food all at once, start taking away a little bit at a time. That forces them to look for other options.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
because I'm telling you, as much as I want to see property taxes gone, because I do believe it's a moral tax, we're not getting it all in one bite.
No.
You
Well,
know,
what was it Reagan that said? You take what you can get. Take the 80.
yeah,
Take the 80.
take the 80. You know, and in this case, maybe the 20.
Yeah. Take something to make it work.
You know, I've always been one of those people that says any tax you can get rid of it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care if you've still got 100 more taxes out there.
Right.
Take that one off the table.
Take one off. Well, that's what I always say. Everybody always worries about the price of gas.
Yeah.
Let's do away with the gas tax. Just right off the jump.
Yeah.
That's 40 cents in our area. Well, 30, it's 18 federal and
Yeah.
20 state or whatever. Take that. 30 cents a gallon. Well, you know, my truck, I'm going to get 25 gallons. So, you know, what's that? $6 a tank that's saving me. I'm running 2 tanks a week. So there's your $24. I'm running $100 a month. Well, at the end, that's $1,200.
Yeah. You know, and you know, of course, there's going to be trade-offs because listen, we're going to have to pay taxes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there's no way. Now, of course, our government is way too big.
Yes.
You know, and it needs to be chopped down considerably.
Yes.
But you're still going to have to pay a tax somewhere on
Yeah.
something. You know, and whether it's a consumption tax, you know, sales tax, if you will.
Right. Yeah. I'm good with consumption.
You know, and maybe you expand it out. You know, maybe if I had to pay if I had to pay sales tax on my house when I bought a house, that'd be a big chunk of money. But if I put that out through my mortgage, okay, I can live with that. As long as I don't have to ever pay another property tax on that property.
It's worth it.
You know, it's worth it. I would do that. Now, the thing is, we look at property taxes and say, well, that's what funds local government.
Right.
You know, and that's where the sticking point comes.
Yeah.
And that's where all your county commissioners and school boards and everybody else was like, oh, we can't get rid of property taxes because we will starve to death. It's like,
We
well,
won't.
we won't. You know, just find another way. Cut back your services somewhat. Do you need 87 parks, you know, out here in the city?
And 17 people apiece sitting out there in the truck not doing anything?
Yeah, or a 1-to-1 administrator to teacher ratio in your schools?
No, absolutely not.
You know, you just need to find better, more innovative ways of doing things. I mean, you've got major manufacturing coming back to this country because guess what? The math is starting to work out in our favor because they've got smarter ways of doing manufacturing. You know, you don't need, you know, 87 guys putting 87 bolts on a manufacturing line.
Right.
You got to have a couple people running the machines that put the 87 volts in.
That's exactly right.
That's that's evolution of manufacturing, and that's where we're going to get to.
Well, okay. So you said earlier we're kind of early in the campaign. You don't even have to file till the end of December 15th,
Uh, yeah, December
maybe.
15
I
or
don't know.
December 2nd,
December.
something like that. Yeah.
So what are we doing till then? What's coming up?
Well, now a lot of people are planning and strategizing, and people are putting out their feelers and assembling their teams and
Right.
organizing. I've been a little. I wanted to be further ahead than I am right now, but I've
Right.
had some health issues come up here recently that I got a lot of doctors in Houston still,
Right.
and it's like my heart doctor's there. Well, he saved my life 7 years ago.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with that.
I had a widowmaker, so it's like, okay, I'm going to stick with him.
Yeah.
And through him, other things have happened, and it's like, okay, so I've got doctors down here.
Right.
I've been going seeing a lot, but and now's the time to start gathering our volunteers, coming up with a little bit of campaign funds, and figuring out what your strategy is to go win the office.
Right.
Because nobody's going to give it to you, and just because the other guy may be lacking in some things, that doesn't, the power of incumbency is big.
Right.
If,
Oh, it certainly is.
if you voted for a guy for a decade, it's like, and if you haven't heard anything different, why would you change, right?
Right.
And that's part of the problem is getting people enough knowledge to say, well, there is a better way,
Yes.
or there's maybe we need to try something different, or maybe we shouldn't be as complacent as we've been.
What I was looking for here is it's Huls for BowieGOP.com.
Yes,
That's how people can find it.
yeah, yeah.
Huls for Bowie GOP. I couldn't remember what it was,
And
but that's what it
and
is.
it could be Hull's for the number 4 Bowie County or Bowie GOP.
Okay.
So I have a website up, which is a vast improvement over what the Republican Party has right now.
Yeah. And that's
At
exactly.
least you'll be able to find things there, and my contact information will be on there. It's like if you want to ask me a question, call me and ask me a question.
Right.
Send me a text, whatever. If it's a 903 number, I'll probably answer it.
Right.
If it's a 281 number, I can answer it. Leave me a message, a voicemail, or something.
Yeah.
And if it's good, I'll get back with you. If not, because I've been getting tons of calls from 281
Right.
because they're just
Well, okay, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Dale, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. If you'll get a chance, Thursday night, 6 o'clock, Big Jake's in Nash will be there. Come join the fun. Anyway, I hope God blesses each and every one of you today.